Hi everyone, I'm Mariana with Three Peaks Classroom. Thanks for joining me. Today I wanted to do a little bit of an experiment that I've seen floating around on social media that I've seen a few other teachers do, and I thought it'd be really fun for me to try it out. So basically I want to see how diverse is the reading library in my classroom, and is it a close representation of the diversity that I have within my school or my classroom? Now I realize that my classroom makeup is going to change every year. But for the most part, my school is quite diverse, and we typically have a similar amount of cultures in our classroom. So this is the second time that I'm filming this video, because the first time that I filmed it, I had a really interesting conversation with a few of my friends that I showed it with. And I felt like the first time that I filmed the video, it didn't quite get my objective across. And so my objective is to see if I have a diverse range of literature available to my students. So basically, do my students, when they walk into my classroom, do they see their own cultures and their families and their traditions represented in the books? And can they relate to the books that I have that are in my classroom? It's not, do I have exactly the percentage of books with white-skinned people as I do with the students in my class. That is not what this experiment is about. It's basically just to see, can my students see themselves in the literature that I have available in my classroom? So first I'm going to show you the cultural diversity that's found within my classroom this past year. Now I categorized my classroom roughly by continent or by culture. And I know there's going to be some people that disagree with the way that I did this, but I found that it was the easiest way for me to kind of differentiate. So I categorized my classroom into about 7 different groupings. And the first one is First Nation, Métis, Inuit. The second category is European. And so basically anyone that has close to kind of whiter skin, even if you are of European descent and you live in Canada, I still categorized you as a European. The third one is of African descent, so that's the third category. The fourth category is Middle Eastern, and now I realize that Middle Eastern can fall under European or under Asian categories, but I found that a Middle Eastern culture is quite specific, so I wanted to include that one. The fifth group is an Asian descent, and again, Asia can be broken down into even more subsections, but I decided to keep Asia roughly together. The only difference is that I did make a subsection of India. So the sixth group I have is of Indian descent. And part of the reason for that is also because I teach about India in grade 3. So I want to have that subsection. And then the last grouping that I have is South American descent. So those are the 7 groups. And what I did is I went through my class list and I put my students into each one of those categories. And you'll see in the chart here that First Nations, Métis, Inuit, I have 11% of my students is from that background. The second grouping, European, 19%. African, is the largest group represented in my class, and that is a 30% chunk. The fourth group is Middle Eastern, which makes up 7%. The fifth is Asian, which is my second largest grouping, and that is 27% of my class. The sixth group is Indian. I had 1 student, so that's almost 4%, and then I didn't have any students from South America. So basically from that chart, you can see that my 2 largest groupings are children with African heritages and children with Asian backgrounds. And I wanted to see, do my books reflect that? Now, these are my read aloud books that I use in my class for general read aloud or for a specific lesson objective. These are not my math read alouds, or I have science read alouds. They're not included in these. These are basically non-subject specific, I would guess, I would say. So I just grabbed these and I brought them home. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sort all of these read aloud books into those 7 categories. And my hope is that these books will closely resemble those percentages of the diversity that I have in my classroom. So here we go. Okay guys, so all of my books are sorted into those 7 categories. So First Nation, Métis Inuit, European, African, Middle Eastern, Asian, Indian, and South American. And then down here I also have 2 piles. These books all have something about diversity, so either animals around the world or children around the world, or there are multiple different cultures represented. And then this pile of books are the books that don't fit any of those categories. So as you can see, I am woefully overrepresented in this category, and I have no books that represent any sort of Asian culture, and that includes Filipino culture. And the majority of my students that are from Asia are mostly from the Philippines, and I don't have a single book that represents Filipino culture. And over a quarter of my class is Filipino. So this needs to be addressed in my reading library. I'm happy to see that my African stack is the largest out of the rest of these, but according to my statistics, this stack should be higher than my European stack. It actually should be the tallest stack. So I have some work to do. So I'm really happy that I did this experiment because it shows that I am quite underrepresenting some cultures in my classroom, and that really breaks my heart because I want every student in my class that comes into my classroom to feel welcome and to feel included. And if I don't have a single resource that highlights where you're from or your culture, that seems a little bit ignorant on my part as the teacher. So I'm going to make sure from now on that all the books that I include in my classroom are going to highlight some of these cultures that I'm very much lacking. Now, this pile of books I talked about are books about diversity. And so although I don't have individual books that highlight, let's say, Filipino culture like I'm lacking, if I take a book, this one's one of my favorites, The Barefoot Book of Children, it does highlight all sorts of cultures around the world. And so at least within this book, children can flip through the pages and they can see, they can maybe notice some similarities in their own lives, and they can relate to some of these students or some of these kids in these books. So I'm thankful that I have books like these in my class, but it couldn't hurt to include some specific resources about, in this case, Asian cultures. So thanks for joining me on my little experiment today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe. In my next video, I'm actually going to show you some of those new diverse books that I've purchased for my class, including a box that I haven't opened yet, so we get to unbox it together and look at the resources together. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my experiment, any questions that you might have or any kind of wonderings that you might have about my experiment. And I'd love to know if you've done something similar to your classroom library. Let me know. That'd be great. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.